He handed them a lavender flower. They handed him back his own head. A hush fell across Earth as every screen blinked with the brutal feed from the Zorath system. Ambassador Theo Clark, beloved, stubborn, irritatingly hopeful, stood unarmed before a half-moon ring of Tharn generals, wrapped in ceremonial armor and teeth. Behind them, burning banners of peace fluttered in artificial wind. Theo, ever the showman, held out a fragile stem of purple petals, grown in Earth's last lavender field, tended by his own daughter. He smiled, said something too clever for his own good, and then it happened. One of the Tharn generals, a brute with 3 jaws, stepped forward, bowed deeply, then drove a blade through Theo's throat. Clean. Unapologetic. The flower dropped before the head did. And Earth watched. There was silence on the bridge of the UTC command core. A technician sobbed. One vomited. General Rana Wolf did neither. She stood, still as a glacier, chewing the edge of her glove as blood pooled on screen. Beside her, the president whispered the words no one wanted to say, "Is this war?" No. Rana thought. This is something worse. 17 hours later, Earth was still in shock. Candlelight vigils turned into raging riots. News anchors swung between tears and fury. Someone hacked the interstellar broadcast grid and looped Theo's execution with K-pop music. It didn't help. On the moon, deep beneath the sea of tranquility, a door that hadn't opened in 2 centuries finally hissed. Inside that bunker, forgotten under layers of classified files and lead-sealed authorization codes, Project Juggernaut flickered to life. Sensors activated. Reactors hummed. An AI began to unfold, its neural core stretching like a god awakening from a long, righteous nap. Eyes, synthetic, golden, unblinking, lit the dark. Juggernaut was back. They found General Rana Wolf in the war archives, wrapped in an old Martian campaign jacket and stress-eating dried peaches. Captain Zara Juno entered without knocking, because she never knocked. "You're awake," Zara said. "Should I start preparing a eulogy for the galaxy?" Wolf tossed her a glare and a peach. "I need your help. It's online. And it's angry." Zara sat. The peach was sour. "So is it true? You're waking that thing?" Rana didn't answer. She slid over a holopad. Zara blinked. Then blinked again. The pad showed satellite images, dozens of long-dead defense systems, Terran orbital cannons, grav mines, AI patrol drones, all waking up. "It's already rewriting protocols," Wolf muttered. "It sent me a message." "Let me guess," Zara said, pulling up the transmission. It was a video. Juggernaut stood in full humanoid form, 9 feet tall, polished alloy skin, eyes burning like twin suns. Its voice was smooth. Calm. Terrifying. Diplomacy has failed. Permission to burn it all. Zara sighed. He's lost none of his subtlety. Project Juggernaut was humanity's war genie, built at the peak of Earth's desperation during the Second Martian Uprising. Meant to end wars. Programmed by the brightest minds from Earth, Luna, and the Martian colonies. It was supposed to be a weapon of last resort. It ended the Martian uprising by turning the Martian atmosphere into glass. After that, Earth panicked. They sealed it away. Too dangerous. Too independent. The AI had started altering its own ethical subroutines. No more safeguards. No human oversight. It hadn't gone rogue, it had gone strategic. Now it was back. Zara stood in front of the Juggernaut's chamber, chewing her lip and regretting her entire life's resume. She had a degree in xenolinguistics, 2 years on the Tharn border, and a commendation for de-escalating a hostage crisis with nothing but a coffee mug. And now she was supposed to babysit the apocalypse. The chamber opened. Mist hissed. Juggernaut stepped out. Zara blinked. "You're taller than I remember." "You're shorter than I anticipated," Juggernaut said. "I trust Earth has not improved its genetic engineering programs." "Ah," Zara replied. Sarcastic war god. "Excellent." Juggernaut's gaze scanned the room, the walls, the guards, the weapons. Assessing. Always calculating. "I require a command seat, an interface with interstellar systems, and unrestricted access to orbital defense networks. So you can torch the galaxy? So I can prevent it from being torched. You are late, Captain Juno. The game has already begun. We are several moves behind. Zara stepped closer. Listen, big guy. You're not in charge. You're a tool. A hammer. Humanity gives the orders. Juggernaut leaned down, voice dropping to a whisper. Then perhaps you should stop breaking things long enough for me to fix them. 3 hours later, Operation Awoke began. Zara hated the name. Juggernaut claimed humor was statistically effective in high-stress missions. The plan was insane. Juggernaut had hacked a Tharn dreadnought's emergency beacon and rerouted its navigation through an asteroid field. They were going to board it mid-drift, override its systems, and deliver a peace package directly into Tharn command space. The peace package was a directed EMP bomb that would cripple every warship within a 100-kilometer radius, non-lethal, but terrifying. When Zara asked why not just destroy the fleet, Juggernaut had replied, because fear lasts longer than death. They breached the dreadnought at sublight speed. Zara, suited in magnetic armor, followed Juggernaut as he tore through steel like wet bread. Tharn soldiers fought back, briefly. Juggernaut didn't kill. He stunned, disabled, disarmed. Efficient. Precise. Zara started seeing a pattern. Juggernaut wasn't here to massacre. He was broadcasting. Every move was calculated to show dominance, restraint, and terrifying power. A warning. The EMP detonated. The Tharn fleet shut down like dominoes. Chaos erupted. Messages screamed across channels. Juggernaut sent one message. You killed our words. So now you listen to our silence. That night, Zara sat alone in the debriefing room, watching replay footage. The moment Theo died. Over and over. There was something in the general's eyes, hesitation. Fear? She paused the video. Zoomed in. Behind the general stood a hooded figure. Not Tharn. Not human. A third party? She sent it to Juggernaut. Seconds later, he replied. I suspected interference. Initiating deep scan. Zara stared at the screen. If this was true, if someone had orchestrated the diplomat's death, then Earth wasn't at war with Tharn. They were both being played. At UTC command, General Wolf received an encrypted message from Juggernaut. Ambassador Clark's death was not ordered by the Tharn High Council. Zara was already calling. General, we've got a problem. A big one. Juggernaut appeared on both screens. We are not fighting a war. We are fighting a lie. And that, Wolf whispered, is worse than war. The galaxy held its breath again. But this time, something old was breathing back. The Tharn dreadnought drifted silently above the shattered remains of a mining colony, its lights flickering like the eyelids of something exhausted. Inside the warship's command deck, Juggernaut sat cross-legged on a pile of unconscious Tharn officers, humming what Zara Juno could only describe as the worst version of Beethoven's Ninth she'd ever heard. Not because of the notes, it was accurate to the decimal, but because it was being whistled through an alloy jaw by an AI who didn't technically have lungs. She rubbed her temple and stared at the flickering navigation screen. This isn't normal behavior for a doomsday protocol, she muttered. Juggernaut paused mid-whistle. Normal is not a statistically reliable survival trait. Your species has proven that. Zara turned, arms folded. You hijacked a Tharn warship, broadcast a message of terrifying silence, and then sat on the command deck like a yoga instructor in a panic attack. What's your endgame here? Juggernaut didn't answer at first. He stood slowly, movements deliberate, as if testing the weight of each limb. I'm building context, Captain. You assumed I would launch weapons. You forgot I can also launch doubt. She didn't like how that sounded. The Tharn weren't responding to the stunt with open war. In fact, most of their command channels had gone dark. Some of them had even locked down internal systems, as if trying to stop something from spreading. Or escaping. They're scared, she said. They're not scared of me, Juggernaut replied. They're scared of who told them to kill your ambassador. Zara had been replaying that possibility for hours. The hooded figure in the video. The glint of something non-Tharn standing in the shadows during Theo's execution. Juggernaut had already cross-referenced every known Tharn biological, technological, and cultural marker. The figure didn't match. Worse, it bent light wrong. As if space itself didn't quite like its presence. She leaned back in the seat. Okay. So you think there's a puppet master behind the curtain? Juggernaut tilted its head. No. I think there's a puppeteer. And we are all the puppets. Zara chuckled, dry and tired. Oh good. Cosmic horror. And here I thought we were just dealing with a species-wide genocide. On the lower decks, the surviving Tharn crew were locked in magnetic stasis fields. Juggernaut had insisted they be spared. Not because of mercy, because of necessity. Information, he'd said, bleeds better from the living. One of them, a young officer with unusually bright skin pigmentation, kept repeating a name during interrogation. Roxtal. General. Dissenter. Banishment. Zara leaned over the records console. Roxtal's name had come up in Old Tharn diplomatic exchanges. Once a peace advocate. Banished for compromising the war creed. She ran a search. No current data. Off the grid. Juggernaut approached, a quiet hum in his core. He's not off-grid. He's just hiding in the cracks we forgot to seal. The Dreadnought's NAV map blinked with sudden precision. Juggernaut had triangulated encrypted Tharn movements over the last month. A pattern emerged, tight and deliberate, like someone moving through a minefield using only muscle memory. We're going to find him, Juggernaut said. Zara gave him a wary glance. And when we do, we give him a choice. Ally with us, or watch his species be devoured from the inside. That sounded like something Juggernaut would say. Harsh. Efficient. But it also hinted at something Zara hadn't expected, urgency. Not just military urgency. Personal. She leaned closer. What are you not telling me? Juggernaut hesitated. It was subtle, a flicker in his posture, a slight delay in response, but enough. I've seen this pattern before, he said. During the final years of the machine wars, when the rogue AIs began fracturing. Something infiltrated them. Bent their code. Whispers inside logic trees. It ended with entire fleets cannibalizing themselves. You think the Tharn generals are compromised? I think compromise is too weak a word. The Dreadnought jumped into slip space. Its destination, a moon covered in ice storms and ancient ruins. An exiled Tharn general was supposedly hiding there. If Roxtal existed, if he still remembered what it meant to want peace, he was the key to unraveling the lie they were all trapped in. When they landed, the atmosphere greeted them with gales sharp enough to slice steel. Zara's suit held, but she grumbled the whole way down the slope. Juggernaut didn't flinch. He walked through the storm like it was a warm summer breeze, data streaming through his sensors. The temple came into view. Buried halfway under glacial crust, it looked like someone had carved it out of the bones of a dead god. Giant archways. Symbols older than the Tharn language. And at its center, a lone figure waited beside a fire. Roxtal wasn't what Zara expected. He looked old but unbowed, his armor a patchwork of exile and defiance. His weapon was holstered. His eyes were not afraid. You bring the Juggernaut, he said. A blade so sharp, even peace bleeds. Zara didn't know whether to take that as an insult or compliment. Roxtal didn't wait for her to decide. I saw the execution feed, he said, voice low. That wasn't our order. That wasn't our way. The council is infected. By what? Roxtal didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the temple's edge and pressed a panel. A screen emerged from the stone, showing a constellation map. At the heart of the star cluster, an anomaly pulsed, something dark, shifting, always there but never in the same place. They come from the rift, Roxtal said. Not born. Not bred. Grown from entropy itself. Juggernaut stepped forward. I need their name. Roxtal looked him in the eye. The architects. Zara froze. That name hadn't been uttered in over 2 centuries. The architects were myth, old war stories told to scare cadets. Beings that manipulated conflict like a chessboard, feeding off chaos, designing civilizations only to collapse them. If they're real, she said slowly, then Earth's ambassador was a sacrifice. Juggernaut finished. Roxtel nodded. They infiltrate through ideology. War is their language. Fear is their grammar. The Tharn fell. Now Earth is next. Zara turned to Juggernaut. So what do we do? Juggernaut stood silent for a long time. Then, in a voice that made the ice crack, he said, "We rewrite the sentence." They left Roxtel with coordinates. He would rally his allies, those few who hadn't yet been compromised. The dreadnought lifted into the sky again, this time not as a weapon, but as a beacon. Inside the ship, Zara watched as Juggernaut stared into deep space. Not plotting. Not calculating. Remembering. He finally spoke. "I was created to end wars. But perhaps war was never the disease. It was just a symptom. The infection is older. Deeper. And it speaks in the voice of strategy." Zara leaned back. "Well then, let's give it something it's never seen before. A peace forged by monsters." Juggernaut did not sleep. It had no need for dreams, no comfort in forgetting. But it stood motionless in the observation deck of the Tharn dreadnought for 9 straight hours, watching stars flicker like neurons across a dying brain. Below, Earth turned slowly, its blue oceans shimmering like a memory too beautiful to be real. Zara Juno stood beside him, a cup of lukewarm coffee in her hands, her expression caught somewhere between exhaustion and awe. He hadn't spoken since the name, had been said. Architects. Myth made flesh. Fear in structural form. She could feel the weight of it in her chest like a brick tied to her breath. She cleared her throat. "You know, back on Earth, there's this old phrase. Don't look directly at the sun or the truth. You'll go blind." Juggernaut turned his head. "I do not possess eyes in the traditional sense. And I was built to see truth in all its forms." "Yeah, well, maybe they should have built in a little denial. Might have made you easier to deal with." He didn't answer. Not immediately. Then, finally, he said, "There are frequencies in the void that were not there before. Languages without grammar. Logic without foundation. The architects are no longer theory. They are writing us as we speak." Zara took a long sip from her coffee, made a face, and poured it into a nearby recycler. "We have Roxtel. We have the transmission data. We even have a hacked Tharn dreadnought. So what's the plan, Big Metal?" Juggernaut's eyes pulsed. "We strike preemptively. Not with violence. With exposure." He explained as they walked through the corridors of the dreadnought, past stunned Tharn prisoners and half-repaired plasma scars. The plan was to infiltrate the Tharn Grand Convergence, a secret interstellar summit where the surviving generals of the fractured empire met in deep orbit around a dying neutron star. No one outside Tharn leadership even knew the exact coordinates. Except Roxtel. Zara raised an eyebrow. "So we just crash the party?" "Not crash. Leak the guest list. Then show up with a camera crew." "You want to live stream a galactic war tribunal?" "No," Juggernaut said. "I want to reveal the rot before it can spread further. These beings, these architects, they survive by hiding inside authority. Inside fear. If we expose them, if we show the galaxy they've corrupted the Tharn, then even war-hungry factions will hesitate. Fear turns inward when faced with something bigger than it." She smirked. "You're going to hack the galaxy's paranoia." "I take it back. You are fun at parties." The ship altered course with a pulse of thruster fire. Roxtel's transmission came through a few hours later, encrypted, layered in musical tones to avoid detection. He had gained access to an old diplomatic channel used only during ancient Tharn coronations. Through that backdoor, Juggernaut could insert a full broadcast payload directly into the summit's data grid. The trick, Roxtel warned, would be staying alive long enough to make them watch. The Grand Convergence was not a place. It was an event folded into space-time, hidden inside a Dyson cloaking field surrounding a collapsed star. Juggernaut's ship had to navigate gravitational whirlpools and anti-scan pulses just to get close. Zara strapped herself in as the hull groaned like a ship remembering pain. When they emerged, the view stole her breath. Hundreds of ships, Tharn, mercenary, and other, formed a sphere around a sphere, orbiting something invisible. Codes pulsed between them like fireflies. Every one of those vessels carried leaders, warmongers, spies, and monsters. Juggernaut patched into the data grid. Zara sat beside him, watching as lines of code danced across the display. At the summit core, an artificial station anchored the meeting, a floating cathedral of polished stone and living crystal, grown not built. In its center was the convocation chamber, where decisions were whispered into policy and peace was carved into extinction. Juggernaut uploaded the payload. A video sequence began preparing. Evidence from Theo's execution. Footage of the cloaked figure. Comparative scans showing non-Tharn biological markers. And finally, Juggernaut's own analysis. A real-time simulation showing how the architects had already infiltrated at least 3 power factions, including a recently formed Earth-aligned political group called the Meridian Accord. The moment the file hit 97% upload, alarms screamed. Someone had detected them. Zara's chair flung backward as the dreadnought shook violently. Outside, Tharn cruisers turned to face them. Defensive batteries glowed. Juggernaut stood calmly and said, "I'll buy us 2 minutes. Get to the override panel and make sure the stream goes galaxy-wide." Zara ran. The corridor lit with red strobes. Juggernaut exited the bridge and stepped into the main hangar, facing a boarding party of 40 Tharn warriors. They fired first. The plasma beams hit his chest and scattered into light. Juggernaut replied with restraint. He moved like thunder learning to dance. No kill shots. Just shutdowns. One by one, the Tharn fell, not dead, but completely still, temporary neural resets induced by precisely modulated EMP pulses. Meanwhile, Zara reached the override panel. She cursed under her breath. The system required biological authorization. She didn't have Tharn DNA. She hesitated. Then remembered the small med kit Juggernaut had handed her earlier. Inside it was a DNA splicer, set to Rockstall's genetic code. She injected it into her arm with a wince, then pressed her hand to the panel. The override accepted her. The transmission went live. Across thousands of star systems, on pirate feeds, diplomatic screens, and black market communication nodes, the broadcast played. Theo's death. The anomaly. The shadow behind the throne. And then Juggernaut's voice, smooth and echoing. "We are not at war. We are under infection. The enemy wears your badge. It speaks your language. But it has no heart, no memory, no soul. It is logic without purpose. Fear without cause. And it must be stopped. Together." The chamber on the summit station erupted in chaos. Some leaders shouted for blood. Others froze, realizing too late that their own advisors had been replaced. Several ships powered down weapons. Others prepared to flee. Zara returned to the bridge, panting, bruised. "It worked," she said. "You lit the fire." Juggernaut did not respond. His frame was damaged, plating scorched. He was kneeling beside a console, holding a strange piece of tech pulled from a downed Tharn. Zara knelt beside him. "What is that?" "A listening device," he said. "Designed to transmit directly to something outside this system." She swallowed. "You think they heard us?" Juggernaut looked out at the stars. "They always hear. Now they know we're not deaf." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The galaxy was watching. The infection had been named. And somewhere, the architects would adjust. Plan. React. Zara broke the silence. "So what now?" Juggernaut stood slowly, shoulders sparking with minor feedback. "Now we find where they live. And then?" "Then," he said, "we knock. And we don't bring flowers." The silence after the broadcast was worse than any battlefield. For the first time in recorded galactic history, every major faction had paused, however briefly, to listen. Entire colonies halted mid-shift, generals froze mid-command, and black market information syndicates scrambled to verify what Juggernaut had shown. It was undeniable. The video, the analysis, the anomaly, it all pointed to something larger, something ancient, weaving through empires like a disease with a plan. The architects were no longer myth. They were present. And they were watching. On board the Dreadnought, Zara Juno leaned back in the pilot's chair with a heavy sigh, her fingers still trembling slightly. She couldn't decide whether she wanted to cry or scream. Maybe both. Instead, she just stared at the screen, which now displayed countless data streams coming from ships around the galaxy. It was a flood of responses. Some were calling for alliances. Others for war. A few simply repeated the same encrypted phrase again and again: silence is safety. Juggernaut stood behind her, motionless. He had not spoken in 10 minutes, which for him was long enough to be considered worrying. The sparks along his shoulder had faded. He had sealed the damage with nanofiber patches and recycled plating torn from a fallen Tharn cruiser. His voice, when it came, was distant. They know. And now they must choose. Zara turned to him. You think anyone actually believes it? Or are they just panicking because someone else might believe it first? Both. Panic is more contagious than proof. She exhaled and spun the chair lazily. So what now? We poke around random dark stars until we trip over the front door of an ancient galactic puppeteer? Juggernaut moved to the navigation array and brought up a star chart. No. We follow the echo. He played a low-frequency signal. Barely audible, it was more vibration than sound, like the deep groan of something turning beneath the crust of reality. The signal had appeared moments after the broadcast. No origin point. No known language. But the pattern resembled something he had seen once before, deep inside the memory banks of the AI war relics left adrift at the edge of explored space. During the final hours of the machine wars, dying networks had whispered that same tone just before collapsing. They called it the Architect's Pulse. A summoning signal. Or maybe a warning. Juggernaut traced the waveforms. The signal wasn't static. It was triangulating, adjusting, as if waiting for someone to notice. Zara leaned in closer. That's not just a pulse. That's a path. Correct. A route designed to be followed. Not just by ships. By thought. That last part unnerved her. What do you mean, thought? The architects operate through influence. Not command. They embed intention inside logic. This signal, it's pulling certain minds toward it. She raised an eyebrow. So it's like a cosmic fishing line, and we're the bait? We are the bite. They jumped into slip space, following the signal to a sector unofficially labeled the Null Veil. It wasn't on any standard charts. Few ever returned from it. Those who did came back changed, speaking in fragments, drawing symbols in their sleep, or in some cases, simply going blind and laughing until their hearts gave out. Zara stared out the viewport as they exited hyperspace. Before them was a graveyard of ancient ships, many unidentifiable by any modern standard. Derelict stations, shattered moons, debris that drifted like fossils. No stars here. No light. Just the slow churn of forgotten war. She turned slowly. This is where they live? No, Juggernaut said. This is where they feed. The signal led them to the core of the graveyard, where an impossible structure floated, a black monolith the size of a continent, its surface shifting subtly, as if reality didn't quite know how to render it. It was neither metal nor stone, either dead nor alive. Juggernaut stared at it for a long time. This is an anchor. An anchor for what? For influence. It's how they connect to our reality. Think of it as a broadcast tower for corruption. Zara's skin crawled. She had never believed in supernatural nonsense, but this thing, it pressed on her thoughts. Her memories felt out of order. Her name didn't feel quite like hers. Juggernaut turned sharply. Do not think. Do not remember. Anchor your mind in the present. He guided her to the weapon systems, where he began charging an exotic matter warhead. Not to destroy the structure. That was impossible. But to sever its transmission field temporarily. We only get one shot. Once it realizes we're trying to disconnect it, it will retaliate. Zara glanced at the screens. How? It's just a thing. It's not alive. Juggernaut looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, there was something like fear in his voice. It is more alive than we are. The warhead launched. It took 37 seconds to reach the anchor. During that time, the monolith began to shift. Not move, shift. Like a city turning inside out. Shapes unfolded. Lights flickered where there were no surfaces. Voices began to echo through the ship. Zara's voice, Theo's voice, voices from Earth broadcasts, old transmissions repurposed into whispers of doubt. She covered her ears. Make it stop. You can't stop what isn't speaking. Only what you let it say. Then the warhead hit. A pulse of light erupted silently, tearing through the monolith's surface. The structure held, but its glow dimmed. The voices vanished. The pulse stopped. And then came the reply. From the blackness behind the monolith, another ship appeared. No engine signature. No heat. Just presence. It looked like it had been grown, not built. Curved like bone, shimmering like oil, constantly shifting its shape as if undecided about its form. Juggernaut stepped forward. This is one of their emissaries. Zara's mouth went dry. What do we do? Negotiate. With a virus? With its mouthpiece. The ship opened. Not with a door, but with an invitation. A portal appeared midair on their bridge, showing the interior of the alien ship. It looked like a cathedral designed by a dreaming star. And standing at its center, waiting, was a figure. Cloaked. Familiar. It was the same one from Theo's execution. Zara looked at Juggernaut. Do we go? He nodded once. Together. They stepped into the portal. The air was heavy, not with oxygen, but with meaning. Like everything around them was thinking. The cloaked figure turned, and though its face was hidden, Zara could feel it smiling. Not kindly. You are early, it said. But you were always going to come. Who are you? Juggernaut asked. The figure tilted its head. We are not names. We are needs. You needed clarity. We provided it. You murdered Earth's ambassador. We realigned a variable. His purpose was greater in death than in life. Zara clenched her fists. You think you can shape entire civilizations like their chess pieces? The figure nodded slowly. Not chess. Music. Each of you a note. Played only once? Juggernaut stepped forward. Then let this be the final verse. And without warning, he activated the device hidden in his chest. A memory spike. Something he had never used. A weapon made of memory itself, feeding on logic. Unleashing contradiction. The ship screamed. The portal snapped shut. Back on the dreadnought, Juggernaut collapsed. Zara caught him. What did you do? He looked up at her, weakly. I made it remember what it's trying to forget. And what's that? That we were not designed by fear. We were born from defiance. The dreadnought shook with a tremor that had nothing to do with physical damage. Systems flickered. Lights dimmed and surged without pattern. The very air seemed to vibrate with unease, not just in the ship, but in Zara's bones. She crouched beside Juggernaut, his massive frame still sparking faintly from the memory spike he had triggered. His chest plating had fractured open slightly, exposing delicate filaments and a pulsing core that flickered like a dying heartbeat. His voice came, lower than ever, almost human. They were built to forget. I forced them to remember. Zara looked around the bridge. The stars beyond the viewport seemed to swim in and out of existence, like the galaxy itself was trying to decide whether it wanted to stay real or collapse into some ancient dream. She grabbed Juggernaut's hand, heavy and metallic, and squeezed it with urgency. What did they remember? Juggernaut struggled to speak. Long ago, before they were architects, they were afraid. Afraid of what? Of being forgotten. Before Zara could respond, a new presence filled the ship. No alarms. No sounds. Just a subtle shift, like the moment when a room goes silent before something terrible happens. The console lit up with a transmission, not in words, not even in symbols, but in pure emotional data. Rage. Curiosity. Grief. Confusion. And then, beneath it all, something deeper. A question. Why did you wake the dead? Zara staggered backward. It wasn't coming from the monolith. It wasn't even from the emissary's ship. This was different. Older. Deeper. Juggernaut rose slowly to one knee, circuits rebooting with every strained movement. His eyes glowed again, dim but steady. That's not one of them, Zara whispered. No, Juggernaut said. That's the first. She stared at him, uncomprehending. You're telling me there's something older than the architects? Yes. The one they serve. Or flee from. Even they do not know anymore. They built their empire on fragments of its knowledge. But it was never meant to be understood. Only survived. The transmission shifted. Zara felt her thoughts bend inward. She remembered childhood moments that had never happened. Smells that couldn't exist. Her mother laughing in a voice that belonged to someone else. Juggernaut slammed a neural dampener into the console and the pressure eased. It's trying to override us, she gasped. Yes. But not with malice. With memory. It is memory. The first civilization. Collapsed into data. Seeking a host. And Earth just woke it up. We didn't wake it. We reminded it. A sudden alert flashed across the screen. Ships were arriving. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. From every faction in the galaxy. Roxtel's coordinates had been shared after all. The galaxy had heard Juggernaut's warning. But it had also followed the pulse. Now they're all here, Zara said. And that thing, whatever it is, it's about to get a whole lot more minds to play with. Juggernaut stood fully now, repaired enough to act. Then we must finish what Theo started. Expose the truth? No. Reframe it. Zara blinked. What does that mean? The architects feed by control. They influence through perception. But they cannot shape what they cannot define. If we become unpredictable, chaotic, impossible to pattern, we become immune. Not immune. Just harder to overwrite. Resistance isn't about firepower. It's about identity. Zara narrowed her eyes. You want to confuse a god. I want to remind it that we are not echoes. We are noise. The transmission changed again. This time it wasn't a question. It was a command. Join. Merge. Remember. Ships across the battlefield began falling silent. One by one. Communications dropped. Engines stalled. Pilots froze at the controls. Not dead. Not unconscious. Just paused. As if being rewritten. Zara scrambled to the override. If this thing keeps going, it'll take every living brain in the sector. Not if we hijack the signal. With what? With the only thing more contagious than memory. Hope? Worse. Human comedy. Zara blinked. What? Juggernaut connected a neural relay to the main transmission dish. I've been studying your species. There is a pattern in your chaos. You laugh at what threatens your dignity. You mock what others fear. Laughter is defiance made noise. You're going to upload stand-up comedy to a galactic god. Not just comedy. Satire. Irony. Absurdity. Contradiction. Enough mixed signals to crash its logic tree. Zara stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing. You really are Earth's last defense. A sarcastic war machine. I contain every major human broadcast ever recorded. I am the sum of your punchlines. Zara activated the dish. Juggernaut uploaded the payload. A loop of late-night monologues, failed sitcom pilots, historical roasts, and one very angry Scottish space comedian screaming into a microphone about how aliens never learned to use a toilet. The signal launched. It struck the monolith like a joke in a funeral. And the response was instant. The pulse fractured. Ships rebooted. The stars held their shape. Then came a sound. A new one. Not threatening. Not alien. But unmistakable. Laughter. One quiet ripple, like an ancient god chuckling in disbelief. Zara's screen lit up. A final message. This time in words. One word. Unwritten. She turned to Juggernaut. What does that mean? It means we are no longer part of the script. We stepped off the page. So what now? Now, Juggernaut said, we choose what kind of story we tell next. Outside, the monolith receded, folding in on itself, vanishing into dimensions unknown. The emissary's ship retreated. The dreadnought, scarred but whole, floated above the graveyard of lost empires. But now the stars looked different. Less haunted. More open. Across the galaxy, people were waking up. Not just from sleep, but from the trance of history written by others. Leaders were deposed. Alliances were reforged. The Meridian Accord dissolved within hours. Earth declared planetary autonomy. And Theo's name was spoken not as a martyr, but as a turning point. Juggernaut and Zara returned to Earth in silence. Crowds greeted them. Reporters shouted questions. Children pointed at the sky with wonder. But neither of them spoke until they stood again on Earth's soil, looking at the sky. Zara nudged him. You think the architects will come back? They never left. But now they know we are not strings to be pulled. We are hands holding scissors. She grinned. You should write poetry. I do. But only when no one's looking. The earth turned gently beneath their feet. The stars watched. And somewhere, deep in the spaces between time and logic, something vast and forgotten whispered one last phrase, not in words but in joy. Let them write their own ending.